Welcome back to the weekly Brooklyn Market Update, brought to you by Angel Volker's Brownstone Brooklyn. My name is Catriona Carney, and I'm joined again today, of course, by Donald Brennan. How are you, Donald?
Well, Catriona, just getting ready for the snow that's supposed to be coming. Hopefully the projections are overestimated. Nothing wrong with a little snow, but definitely don't want to, make it difficult to get around here in Brooklyn.
Definitely. Let's hope for a little amount of snow. So this week is our special edition where we're going to focus on townhouses, new to market and in contract across the 15 Brooklyn neighborhoods that we cover. We know how much people love to talk about townhouses, so we're hopeful that this will be of great interest to a lot of you. But before we go into that, would you like to give us a few highlights of last week's overall market data, Donald?
Certainly, a couple of trends here that are continuing that have established themselves over the previous few weeks. One of them is in the luxury segment here, where the trailing four-quarter average of in-contract deals has exceeded the number of new-to-market listings now for the third week in a row. So that's very interesting. And then below the 2.25 segment, we had 2.3 times more listings going into contract last week than actually were introduced to the market. So some real strong buy side activity. The new to market listing numbers are not really a surprise at this time of year. They do trend downward a little bit, but those properties going into contract, very strong evidence of a very confident buyer pool, which is great to see.
So can you give people an idea of the relative size of the Brownstone Brooklyn 1 to 4 family townhouse market before we get into all the data?
Yep, and just as a reminder, before we start talking about this data set, we work just about everywhere in Brooklyn and Manhattan as well. Our reports, both our weekly report and our quarterly report, and these conversations we have based on those reports really pertain only to 15 neighborhoods that we currently track and report on. In those 15 neighborhoods, I'm just going to read the list for you based on the ranking for average sale price of townhouses in the neighborhoods we cover off of our third quarter closed transaction report. And those neighborhoods are Brooklyn Heights, Cobble Hill, Boerum Hill, Carroll Gardens, Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, Park Slope, Prospect Heights, Greenpoint, Gowanus, Williamsburg, Bed-Stuy West and Bed-Stuy East. We break that neighborhood down into two because it's such a massive piece of real estate. Downtown Brooklyn, Columbia Street Waterfront District, and Dumbo. So the amount of product of asset value in those 15 neighborhoods for the 1 to 4 family townhouse type is somewhere around $65–70 billion. So it's a pretty big pool of assets there that are trading hands or available to trade hands at any given time.
So of that 65 billion, how many 1 to 4 family townhouses do typically trade in a year? What's a typical year?
So this year, a little not so typical, right? But we'll go back, look at 2019 for comparative purposes here. We had 557 townhouses sold in that calendar year, which is a little under 2% of the 1 to 4 family housing stock. It was actually 1.8% of those total townhouses traded. In 2020, in the first 3 quarters, we show 348 of these 1 to 4 family townhouses closing. And then so far in the fourth quarter, with just under 3 weeks to go here, we show 191 townhouses going into contract. And that 191 is split almost exactly 50-50 between luxury townhouses, which again, in our data set is above 2.25. There were 95 of those. And below that threshold, there were 96 townhouses going into contract. And some of those may have closed already. In the fourth quarter of 2019, there were 177 homes sold. So we're on a pace to eclipse that right now. Assuming all these get closed in the fourth quarter. Maybe not, we'll see. But again, activity as strong, possibly not even, maybe even stronger as this year winds down as compared to last year. And which is again, great to see because for the two middle quarters there, the second and third, very muted activity because of the circumstance of the pandemic.
So if we go back and talk specifically about the luxury segment of the townhouse market, the above 2.25 million in terms of what's been actually happening there.
Yep. The past 6 months, which is the time frame we're going to talk about here in this data set, post lockdown, basically, we had $1 billion of 1 to 4 family townhouses introduced to the market, and approximately 50% of that on a value estimate, or 560 million, entering contract or closed. 6-month time frame. Some of those houses will have closed by now. And that's a pretty good absorption rate relative to some of the other housing types available here in our marketplace. Resale condominiums, closing or going into contract at a 36% clip versus what is new to market for that particular product type. And then the new development segment, they're going into contract at about 31% rate versus the new to market activity for that particular type of condominium. The majority of the townhouses that we've recorded closing here over the past 6 months are all between the 2.25, again, the luxury segment, 2.25 and 4 million, with just a few, half a dozen or a little more, trading above that $4 million mark in the luxury segment.
So any advice for townhouse buyers looking right now to get a piece of brownstone Brooklyn?
Certainly, the marketplace is a lagging kind of environment where you're out there looking, and you may be referring to data that has to do with closed sales that in most cases is trailing at a minimum of 3 months, sometimes up to 5 months, depending on how it's recorded and when it falls in those quarters. And not just for our data, but any brokerage firm's data out there, which reports on closed sales typically on a closed quarterly basis. And then those numbers usually show up in different media channels. So right now, being out there in the marketplace, with selling homes and looking at buyer activity, it's pretty strong. There is, from my experience, an unusual amount of buyer activity, people looking at this time of year, post Thanksgiving, prior to the end of the year, which is usually one of the slower times of the year as far as buyer activity goes. So if you are a buyer, you just want to be careful and cautious that you're not thinking that there's, certainly significant amount of discount to be had to you as a buyer, because there's nothing going on. Very strong activity, as we just mentioned, in the fourth quarter, and a lot of people out looking for, not a lot of product. Are you seeing that as well, Catriona?
Definitely. I mean, there are more people around, and the fact of the matter is most people aren't going anywhere. They're still working from home, so they have actually more time to continue with their activity. There's no reason for them to stop. And that's definitely reflected in the number of people that are out there interested and want to do deals.
Yep.
So that's it from us for this week. Next week is our last session of 2020. So we're going to do a wrap up of the year and give you some highlights. Want to talk about that briefly, Donald?
Sure. We're going to, kind of focus in on the trends that have been established coming out of, again, the lockdown 6 months ago. We're going to focus on this kind of second half of the year primarily, and compare it to what happened last year across the board, and kind of give people an indication of what to expect as we enter 2021. For me right now, all indications are that market will be very active early in the year, as opposed to kind of picking up steam a couple of months out historically, heading towards an April, May, June, where there's usually the most activity. That, based on what I see right now, I expect a healthy amount of buyers out there in the market going into contract and deals early in the year. So we'll talk about those trends and how they may impact your opportunities in January.
So looking forward to next week. That's bye from me for now.
Goodbye. And just, one more thing, Catriona, what we talk about here again is, everybody's circumstances are different, right? And, whether you're a buyer or seller, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, right? Because we can talk about your situation specifically, about your needs, on the buyer sell side, and help you understand where the pricing should be for you as a seller. And if you're a buyer, what your options may be at the budget that you're working at. So again, don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to share advice with you at no cost to you, and and help you, take the next step.
Definitely. See you next week.
Take care.
Bye.